Okay, so we're going to switch things up here for a minute and talk about some of the projects I'd worked on prior to creating the channel, the Heywood Planes channel. So for about 4 years, I've been building these models with the infill method, just buying kits, sticking tissue kits, and then infilling all the openings in the framework rather than applying the paper or the silk span or whatever. And so this is an earlier project. This one I think I completed about a year ago. This is a Stearman. This is a PT, what would this be, with a Continental engine. So PT-17 had the Lycoming engine. That's the same engine that I put on the more recent Stearman, the one I did on the channel, the PT-9. That has the exhaust collection happening in the front of the motor. So that's the PT-13, and then PT-17 is what this is, and this has the Continental engine, the Continental radial, which collects all of the exhaust into a collection ring on the firewall, and exhaust out here through the right side. So I had to mock this engine up. The part that comes with the Guillow, with the Guillow model, is a big plastic piece that looks something like this. I don't know if you can see that. You see how it has this big plastic projection out of the front. It has kind of a secondary ring, and then the primary ring, which is the same diameter as the fuselage. So if you look at this, you can see this is that primary ring, the outer ring here, and I cut off essentially everything else. Sorry about that. So that so that I could mock up this engine and make it fit. And where it needed to fit was with these the exhaust plumbing that goes into the collection ring. The smaller diameter ring was too small to fit that. Again, here it is here in the middle. So I just sliced it off cleanly right there and added a piece of balsa sheet, cut it in a circular shape to fit that, and then sanded it all smooth, and then created more of a Continental engine crankcase. I used the Guillow supplied cylinders, just made little pedestals for them to make them fit so that they'd be high enough for the plumbing to work and so on. So there was a bit of a process there creating this engine. This crankcase, the best model I've ever seen that incorporated that was a replication of the Stearman PT. Which one would it have been? PT, I guess 18, that had the Jacobs radial engine on it, and so it kind of works if you're going to replicate a Jacobs motor. And the PT-18. But for this airplane, I wanted the Continental engine on it. I wanted to do a PT-17. So anyway, that covers the motor, I guess. The wings were all done with infill. Most of the kit supplied parts were done to replicate or simulate the fuel tank on top. I added the fuel tank support here that goes across the center of the tank. This just bolts on. It's to help support the fuel tank from above. There's actually sort of a cradle that holds the fuel tank into the wing, and this is just the top support for that. There's a fuel cover cap there that I just replicated with a piece of cardstock and a small slice off of a, oh gosh, I think it was a maybe 1/8 inch diameter dowel rod. I just sliced off a piece of that to make a pedestal for the fuel can. there's the wing walks. I think again I just used the paper on that, the kit supplied paper. I just painted them black instead of that kind of odious green that they come in. Here you can see the cockpits, forward cockpit, how much the light is affecting our view there. But there you gotta maybe kind of see it there. Our pilot, rear cockpit. And again, I was going for an aircraft. Here's a picture of it. Again, this is all from the virtual airdrome. This is where one of my forums that I put these build threads up on. Here you can see the aircraft I was more or less going for. There are two versions of this airplane. One has the wooden prop, and I think that one has yellow struts, and then the one I built has a metal Hamilton standard prop, and on that one the struts are gray. So that's what we did here. I have the gray struts, and I have a replication of the Hamilton standard metal prop from that airplane. The decals were provided by a company called Bedlam Creations, and I think Jason is the guy's name there. Right, so again, this is from an earlier build before I started the channel, and I just thought, well, one of our viewers had asked me to do this, kind of go back and do a little bit of a walk around, if you will, of some of those, maybe talk about the processes and so forth. There's the belly pan that we did just out of balsa, and again, instead of using tissue covering, I infill all of the openings and then try to sand to the best finish I can get, and then paint. I know a couple of people have asked me on the forums, why don't I use the tissue covering? Why, don't I want to see the ribbing and the stitching effect? And my answer to that is I'm building these more for durability, and I've used tissue covering in the past and other kinds of covering. And with tissue, sometimes you get a little bit of distortion as it tightens. Some of the stringers and some of the other parts are unable to resist as that tissue dries and pulls everything a little tight, and you get a little distortion. That's part of it. The other part is that it's not durable. That tissue covering tends to dry out over time, especially if you're painting on it, if you're trying to color it. So well, I've built those in the past. They just don't hold up over time, and after about I don't know, a period of time, a few years or whatever, you've got this kind of tattered looking mess. And this is for durability. Don't ask me why. I want them to last a little bit longer than that, so I do the infill, and I don't try to replicate the ribbing. At least I didn't on this one, and I guess it's just personal preference or artistic license or whatever. On most aircraft, when you're standing back or watching them fly, that stuff is not so visible. What you end up with is you're looking at basically the overall image of the airplane and not its brass tacks details. And to me and to my eye, this is a Stearman PT-17. So that's, I guess, good enough for me. As I said, purists and rivet counters may argue, and that's fine. Everybody, has their own style and what they're trying to create. But this is what I did. Anyway, maybe in the next video I'll do a side by side, this one and the more recent Stearman. Just for comparison's sake, just so you can see, this was the Stearman that was accepted by the Army and Navy leading up to World War II. The other Stearman I made, the Cloud Boy, was an attempt to get a contract in the year or two, or maybe even 3 years before this Stearman was ready. And it was submitted for that, but it was not accepted at that time. And so the Cloud Boy sort of disappeared. I think only a handful of them were built. They were really just modifications of the what did they call their Model 6, I think it was. Stearman Model 6 was converted for the Army contract submission, and it was designation was changed to YPT-9 for that. And a few different things, a few modifications were made to the Model 6 to get that airplane. But again, it wasn't accepted. It was a few years later, and this airplane was accepted. And by then, I think Boeing had taken over Lloyd Stearman's company. So this is often, or pretty much always, referred to as a Boeing PT-13 or PT-17. It actually, it was a Stearman design, or at least a strong derivative. Okay, so anyway, this is a previous project. I just wanted to give you an overview of it. Again, we had a sampling aircraft that we were going for, and this is it. And hopefully our result wasn't too far off the mark. It's a bit of a fisheye effect with this camera, but I don't know. I tried to get as close to that as I could. And this is that result. All right, we'll do a few more of these, I think, over time. But that's it for today. Have a good day.